Hello everyone, today I'd like to talk about the 10 cities musicians should consider living in to start their career. I thought about this idea a few days ago, thinking about places to live as a musician myself. Obviously, any list is going to have, depends on what you're looking for, right? If you're looking for the best bang for your buck, the answer for what the best city is going to change. If you're looking for the most amount of money, same thing. Depending on your genre, a certain city might be more ideal than another one. So I thought of all those factors and came up with a top 10 list or a 10 city list that I think would be really helpful. So I'm just going to go through it right now as quickly and succinctly as possible, and hopefully I can give anyone who's thinking of moving somewhere. Maybe you just finished college and you kind of want a fresh start, want to think of a city. Maybe you're not happy with where you're at and you're thinking of what would be a good move. Or maybe you're fine where you're at and you maybe are looking to see if there's something better, what options are available. So hopefully this video helps a few of you out. So it's hard to kind of rank them, so I decided to just go the easy way, and I'm just doing an alphabetical order. So here we go. So the first city up is Atlanta. Now Atlanta is, a lot of people don't think of the South sometimes, unfortunately. We just kind of dismiss it. You think East Coast, West Coast, but the South has something to say about music. I think that's been very clear. They have a big hip-hop scene. Obviously, if you're into hip-hop, into hip music production from that aspect, Atlanta is going to be definitely one of the places to live. It's still a big city. It's known, or it's a big city in the country, big city. I wouldn't even say in the world. It's probably a top 30 city or something like that. So music just comes out of there all the time, especially hip-hop music. But they do have a blues scene, a jazz scene, a country scene, even classical. It's all really there. It's a big city. I haven't personally visited Atlanta, but I do know some people who are musicians there, and they've told me that it's a great place to live and a great place to check out, and I plan on checking it out soon, but haven't done so quite yet. And the cost of living is lower, so if that's something that you think I can make a good amount of money, and then it actually will kind of feel like more because I won't have, my bills won't be as high. Atlanta is a good city to consider. Number 2. Austin, Texas. Another city I haven't personally been to, but have known a lot of musicians who have gigged there, played there. I believe South by Southwest is there. So Austin's a big music city. They claim to be one of the music capitals of the world, along with Nashville. So they kind of fight for that title, and it seems like it's rightfully earned, especially in the country music, the rock music. It's also a booming city. It's one of the biggest growing cities in the country right now, and I expect that to continue to grow. Austin's going to continue to grow. So I definitely think same thing, bang for your buck. The price of rent and living there is rising, but I still think it's relatively lower than your New York and LA's and those types of places. So again, if you want a city that has a really, really good live scene where live music is not only accepted and encouraged, but expected at restaurants and other venues, Austin's a really, really great place to be, and it should be a consideration for any musician. All right, number 3, my hometown, Chicago. Here, got my Chicago Sky shirt today. So yeah, Chicago, obviously we're known for our jazz, we're known for our blues. Very, very rich here, everyone knows that. But we also have a great hip-hop scene, whether it was the big artists like the Commons, Rhymefests, Kanye West's that have came out of here, or our up-and-coming people like Chance the Rapper, Saba. We have a lot of different hip-hop artists coming up from here. There's a really great scene, and it's super supported. So, and rock too, we have a lot of good rock. Smashing Pumpkins, like I can just name pretty much any genre, and Chicagoans came from there and came up through the scene. So yeah, it's a big scene. It's really a healthy place to live. The cost of living is higher than the cities I just mentioned, but it's also cheaper than your New York and LA. So we're kind of like a big middle. It's really expensive, but it depends where you're willing to move to. There's other areas of Chicago that are definitely going to be more on the affordable side. You can find it, and I found it, so I'm sure you can find it as well. Yeah, obviously I recommend living. I live here, so I was born and raised here. I think it's a great place to live. It does have some of the limits that some of the other bigger cities don't have, which we'll get into when we get to those cities, but definitely depending on your circumstance, this might be a huge upgrade in terms of potential gigging opportunities, just being around the world city where you have access to easier transportation, easier to get to and from gigs. I think it's a great city to consider, and one that I'm proud to call home. Number 4, LA. Now, funny enough, this is the place that I plan on moving to in a couple years. So obviously it's going to be on my list, and I think it's a phenomenal place. I've visited many times already. It's got fantastic scene, especially when it comes to film composing and game audio composing, which is what I'm interested in doing more of. That's one of the places to be, just flat out. California, LA, it's one of the places to be for that. Their jazz scene's a little interesting, it's different, but I like what I've heard from there, what I've seen from the clubs that are there. The rock scene obviously is huge. That's where so many rock musicians go to California, move to California, came from California. It's everything's there. It's just big. It's wide. It's not just one city. You get also the surrounding areas. You also get all of California. You know, if you're a gigging musician, if you're in a rock band, a couple hour drive you're in San Diego. A couple hours more, you know, you're in San Jose, Sacramento, San Francisco. So you don't just get that city and its surrounding neighborhoods. You get, you know, if you're willing to do the drives, you're getting some other cities that are probably even bigger than the one you're at. So it kind of becomes an area where you can kind of dominate that entire Southern California scene, all of California really, if you're ready and willing to do the work. The money's there. It's very expensive. Same thing. You can look around. It's going to be pretty expensive. You have to realize that. But you should be looking, especially when you're making decisions on moving. I'm not saying assume success, but it's only a problem if you're not as good as you say you are. If you think you're a good enough musician, you're honest with yourself, and you've been doing the work to be great at your craft and improve on your craft, you shouldn't think, oh, the rent's too high, I'm not going to be able to afford that. Well, you're moving there to get more gigs, to get more money. So yes, the higher rent, but if all you're saying is you're missing the opportunity, you should go out there, go get that opportunity, go get it then. So I don't like that kind of negative mindset some people have on that. You shouldn't be too reckless, but you also shouldn't be assuming a loss. So yeah, if you're good and you're talented and you've been working hard, yeah, the money's more, but you're also going to get more. So go get it and then make sure that works to your advantage. Number 5, Nashville. I love Nashville. I've been a couple times. I went for the DIY Musicians Conference a couple years back, and I visited really quick for like 2 days on my way to drive to Orlando last summer, and its scene is amazing. Their country scene, their rock scene is super strong. It's not that big, but where they're at, it's amazing. You know, you go downtown Nashville, and it's every restaurant, several floors, all music. You could throw a rock outside and you're gonna hit a good guitarist. It's really crazy. It's inspiring. If you've never been to Nashville, I'd recommend that over Lollapalooza, Coachella, all of that stuff. Spend Friday through Sunday going to Nashville. Just have a goal of I'm going to hit up as many clubs and listen to as much music as I can. I promise you'll come back so recharged, relaxed, and motivated. It's my number 1 recommendation. Every musician should go to Nashville and see what's going on down there because it is phenomenal. So yeah, I 100% recommend it. Same thing, it's country, rock, blues more than jazz, hip hop, and classical, but it's all of that's there. They have everything there. I can't think of many things Nashville doesn't have. And like I said, if you're into country and rock music, audio production, it should be 100% consideration. Again, I have a friend who just moved there to do audio engineering and be on that aspect of the recording, and they're doing a really great job out there so far. I'm really proud of them. So they've been doing awesome, and yeah, it's a great scene. So 100%, you should visit it regardless. But it should definitely be a consideration. Same thing, cost of living's lower. It's a really good opportunity for those who are willing to take it. Okay, number 6, New Orleans. Obviously, New Orleans, home of jazz, home of blues, still strong country scene. Same thing, like they're to jazz what Nashville is to country. I mean, if you're a jazz musician, 100% probably the place you should be. I'm here in Chicago, so it's a strong 2 or 3, but probably number 1's probably always going to be between New Orleans and New York. So yeah, same thing. Cost of living is also cheaper. So yeah, if you're a jazz musician, it should be a very, very strong consideration and also a must-visit to place. Okay, speaking of New York, they're at number 7. Again, alphabetical order. Obviously, New York, world city. Some people argue the greatest city in the world. They have everything, right? So they have classical music, new music, jazz, hip hop, rock. They just have it all. They have it all. Super big, very expensive, very competitive. You know, they have all the niche things. You know, if you want to be you know, trombonist, or you want to play the, cone on a subway, they have it all. So they're gonna have everything. So they just have more. It's really no other way to put it. I think other cities can compete with their best, but their depth is more, right? There's going to be more guitarists, more drummers, more trumpeters. So maybe other cities can compete talent-wise, and it's neck and neck. But when you look at like their top, 500 musicians, can kill anyone else's top 500 just because they just have more. It's more talent, more opportunities, bunch of restaurants, bunch of places to play different types of music, whether it's jazz or classical, etc. Hip hop music was born there. It has everything. And also, again, the benefit of being in New York, you're only a couple of hours away from Boston, a couple of hours from Philadelphia, Baltimore, New England. So you kind of get that whole coast. If you're willing to kind of gig and travel a bit, you don't just get New York, you get everything around New York. So it's another thing that adds to the benefit. Again, expensive, but right, if you're gonna be as successful as you say, you got to make it happen. Maybe you live in New Jersey and you travel down there and you get the gigs. You got to make it work. So money's always a factor. We live in a capitalist world. That's just reality. But you should also be thinking of, hey, I'm gonna be successful. Where can I be the most successful? New York's probably a good bet. So something to consider. Okay, number 8, Seattle. Obviously, everyone knows Seattle for their grunge scene, their rock scene. You want to know where rock music's going, where it's heading. Probably take a look at Seattle, and in a couple years, you're going to hear that sound everywhere. And that's still true today. It was true in the 90s, early 2000s, and it's true now. Cost of living is also pretty high. But it's a really niche place. You got Seattle there, you got Portland there. The Pacific Northwest is pretty interesting, and if that's a vibe you're into, it should probably be a place you live. So yeah, again, you get Seattle, you also get Portland, you get the Pacific Northwest. It's got its own scene, its own vibe. You definitely should visit all these places. You should visit before you make a decision, but it's definitely a city to consider. Okay, number 9. I'm going to go at a lot of options here. I think I actually messed up the alphabetical. Memphis should have been first. Memphis should have been higher, but I have Memphis here. And Memphis should have been number 5. So I kind of messed it up there, but it's okay. We'll make the adjustment. So number 9, Memphis. Again, lots of jazz, lots of blues, lots of country. They dominate that. And it's a great place to live. The cost of living is probably the best of all the cities, I believe. So again, money's an issue. Memphis is a great scene, and the rent is cheaper than I think every other city that I've mentioned. So maybe something to consider if the area you are at is just not working for you. Memphis is a phenomenal place to visit, to play, and to make a living as a musician. Okay, now number 10, I'm going to go with a Zag. I've been thinking of some of the big places, the places that people are going to consider. I'm going to give 10 to kind of everyone else. So there's a lot of different ways to be a musician. So I'm going to give this one as the other cities. Other city options, kind of honorable mention to everyone. I have a friend who lived in Philadelphia, and even though that was a big city, they wanted to move out to the country to do their music. They're a composer, so they don't have to necessarily play gigs that way. They play at a church. They do organ work. They're an organist. They compose and do those gigs for the East Coast and all that. Still, they kind of create a little community. They got like 20, 30 people that are working together in the area, making music for the churches, for the city, all that kind of thing. So, right, it's not a big place. It's what they felt at peace with, and they found a way to make it work. And I think that's inspiring. And again, remember, just because you're somewhere small, we have the internet now. We have, depending on what kind of music you're making, you don't necessarily have to be in those places. You can still get gigs at those places. Maybe not like an in-person gig, but maybe you're commissioned to do a work. Maybe you are teaching online or things like that. There's different ways to make money as a musician. Maybe you're doing it through YouTube, like, monetizing that. There's different ways to do it. It still is always helpful, even though there's different ways to do it. It's always, in my opinion, helpful to be at the big city, because then you're unstoppable. You can do it virtually and there, because you're there. So, how can you lose? But, if that's something you're interested in, I've seen people do it. It can work. Anything works if you work. So it's something to consider. If you really don't want to move, maybe you don't have to. Maybe you do, but you can find a way to make it work. I had a friend who did it, and it can be done. Other places are, I didn't talk too much about electronic music, or maybe DJing. Other cities you might think about for that is like Miami. The cost of living is a bit high, but if you go on the outskirts, it's a little cheaper. And the weather's always good, so there's always gonna be gigs, always gonna be parties. DJs kill down there. Miami, even Orlando, with Disney and everything like that. It's a very tourist area, and tourists, restaurants, bars, parties, DJing electronic music, that stuff's going to really thrive in those areas. So maybe you're going to look for those warmer climates. And the other kind of big cities I didn't talk about are like, your Bostons, your Philadelphias, your ones on the West Coast, like I didn't talk too much about, like San Francisco's, your San Diego's, your Sacramento's, think of other places around the coast. Maybe you want something busier, but maybe New York's too much. Then maybe Boston, Philadelphia is a more appropriate place for you. Again, when it comes to making these decisions, if you're kind of stuck right now, understand it's hard. You're going to take a risk. You're not going to know until you do it. But if you do your homework, you can pick a place where you can at least envision an ideal world for yourself. So there you go. Those are my top 10 cities that musicians should consider living / moving to. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you feel like I snubbed your city, go ahead and mention it. I mean, I want to give people more options, more information. So if there's something to consider that maybe I missed out on, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys for the next video.